Please welcome James McQueevy, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, on why developing content for tablets is worth the effort.
All right, good. I was waiting for my soundtrack. I got a few seconds of it. Good morning, everyone. I don't know if I'm just scaring people that no one's sitting here on these early front tables. In the back, there's full tables up here if you want to come sit down. I have a pretty tough job this morning. You're in this industry every day. You're thinking about tablets, new form factors, new content experiences every day. And you're probably really excited, as I am, to hear from your peers in the industry talking about their ideas for apps that they're going to build, their experiences and their successes. And I think you want to hear all that. The reason why I need to go first is I need to lay down basically the foundation of knowledge on which you're going to build all of those experiences, because the devices that we're here to talk about are not simply the iPad 1, the iPad 2, and maybe a Motorola Xoom, and perhaps a couple of Samsung Galaxy Tabs. There's actually a much bigger thing happening here, and I want to give you that context, talk about what it might mean for you as an industry as we see it start to unfold. So if I can see my slides up there, what I'm here to do is talk to you about how tablets are shaping the future of reading, and what this will do is allow me to then help you understand why it is in fact worth doing all of what you're doing in this industry to take advantage of tablets. So let's start with first things first, the forecast. This is our updated forecast, which we just released in January around the time of CES. We're really fortunate in that this forecast takes advantage of now 6 months worth of surveys that we were able to conduct that included iPad intenders as well as iPad owners. And I'll show you some information about iPad owners in just a second. But what you're looking at is two different data points. The blue bars represent the units sold. That's not super important to you. It's very important to Best Buy, where I was on Monday speaking with the CEO of Best Buy in front of a group of about 200 people, because they want to sell those devices. But one thing that you learn from that is that very quickly we're going to be in a business where tens of millions of these things are selling in the United States every year. What you're really here to look at is that red line on top, which is the total tablet PC users in the United States. By 2015, we're looking at 82 million people who will have some kind of tablet device. Now, I am going to tell you that it gets a little squishy in the 2015 timeframe, because what we consider a tablet is probably going to be subject to significant debate before that time, but certainly by that time. In fact, next month, the Kyocera Echo phone goes on sale, which is a dual screen slider phone with one screen behind the other. You slide it out, snap the screens together, and you have a mini tablet. Is that a tablet or is it a phone? It's super cool, by the way, and I really want one. But it's going to really cause that line to get confusing, because it's going to be hard in some cases to distinguish one thing from the other. Oh, by the way, before I get you too nervous about capturing things, all of these slides will be available to you at the end. My last slide will show you a link that you can go to. My company would like you to register to get a copy of this. If you want to register, you're welcome to, and you can get a copy of the whole deck. So what I want to tell you, though, is probably no adoption nerds in the room, but I'm one, so I get to talk about this. Look at the shape of that curve. It's a traditional S-curve. It's a little, it was, okay, now it is again, a traditional S-curve. The thing that I want you to understand about that is it only started in 2009. See, that's the shape of an S-curve that usually stretches out over about 10 years. And it's all happening in 6. This is very unprecedented. There are very few technologies that go through this kind of curve. Believe me, I specialized in this in my doctoral research. And the thing that's causing us internally a lot of question is, what can we compare this to? There's almost nothing that we've ever seen, not in the consumer technology business certainly, that's achieved this level of penetration in that shorter time span, that didn't require some kind of ramp. Those of you who are familiar with this kind of data analysis know that usually there's a 3-4 year ramp. Even the iPod, it's so funny, I always have to pause before I say iPod or iPad, because I'm from Boston, and in Boston you can't always tell the difference between the iPad and the iPod. If you go back to the iPod, when it first came out, it actually came out in 2000, one, and it took several years to ramp its way up before it suddenly became the overnight sensation that we all think it was. The iPad is actually one of the first things that is an overnight sensation. What we have yet to see is whether or not that's going to be an effect that carries over to other tablets. In other words, as we've seen Samsung put millions of the Galaxy Tabs in the market, we're not seeing that they're actually selling through to consumers yet. The Motorola Xoom is in market now too. We're not seeing that it's selling in the same numbers, of course, that Apple's iPad is. And that's not to say, oh, they're dead in the water, they're not going to work. It's just they don't benefit from the same power that Apple brings, so that Apple can sell 600,000 units in its opening weekend of the iPad 2. Okay, so those numbers are there. Some thoughts for you to think about how big this is. Basically, the point is this is a big deal. The other point from someone's perspective, if you're thinking, oh, wow, we really need to make this happen today, it has to happen today, I don't want to discourage that. I think you're right if you feel that way. I do want you to understand, though, look at the difference. By the end of 2011, 26 million compared to 82 million, there are still plenty of people who are going to get their first tablet experience in 2012 and beyond. And so there will be millions of hearts yet to be won over the next several years. Now, don't take that as an excuse to relax. I don't think you can, because, again, nothing has ever grown this fast. You can't ignore it for a year, certainly maybe for a week. Okay, so let's share some other data with you very quickly, and then we can talk more conceptually about what's happening. First thing I want to show you is the top 10 list of what people who own a tablet today. This survey went in the field in January. We pulled out the data. The top 10 things that people use their tablets for, it looks suspiciously like what you do with a computer. Remember that thought, because we're going to come back to it in just a minute. We're looking at email, looking up information, whether you're doing it on the web or however, playing games, watching video. It's a little more entertainment-centric than typical computer use. So that's to be understood, and it makes sense given the personal form factor that we're talking about. To the bottom of the top 10 list, at just under half, reading newspapers and magazines. So you're on the top 10 list. You're up there. And this is not something that's on the top 10 list of computer users. So it's very significant that you're looking at a form factor which is encouraging the consumption of your medium in a way that the PC did not and does not. So you know that, that's why you're here, that's why you care about this. But I think it's good news to understand that this device invites what you have to offer in a way that other devices do not. In fact, that whole phone tablet division line that I told you was going to blur, you actually don't want that blurring to occur for a while, because people are building the tablet in their minds as a place to read things like magazines. But they are not building the phone in their mind as a place to read things like magazines. So you want to keep those two things separate for a while. And I think you're in luck. I think they'll remain separate for just a little bit. Okay. What are they doing with your traditional medium as a result? This is just we gave people a longer than this list of things that they might do less now that they have a tablet and can shift that behavior. You'll see it's interspersed with traditional media like print newspapers and print books and print magazines, where you come in at number 5. 20% of these people are saying that they are consuming their print magazines less than they did before. I'll get into the methodological problems with this question in just a second, because I don't want you to just buy this completely. But notice that it's interspersed with device use. Yeah, so I use print newspapers less, and I use a desktop computer less. That's actually a validating point. That people are framing it this way means that they are probably being more accurate than these kinds of questions usually lead to. Now, are people literally picking up their iPad and then saying, now I no longer need this magazine? The answer is probably no. The answer is probably maybe even a bit more devastating than that, at least from some perspectives, which is they had already put the magazine to the side, and now they're picking it back up. So the devastating part is that they had already mentally thought that the print newspaper was not as important to them. For that 20%, I don't want to make this generalizable to all the people who have an iPad, but to that group that do, who are saying, yeah, I don't need print magazines as much, they probably had already made that decision before they had the iPad. Now they have the iPad, they're able to consciously process that and say, yeah, I don't need magazines as much as I did before. Now, for the rest of them, though, a vast majority, there is either no change or number of them are saying they use it more. Now, that sometimes is very suspicious. In this case, I'm going to buy it. When 8% of them say they're actually using the magazine more, the reason I buy that is that we see that in plenty of digital media, in particular in digital video media, that we see that when people get excited by Hulu, suddenly they have a new show that they found on Hulu and they love it, and they want to start watching it in linear television. It's been demonstrated over and over that that's happening. So you might, for some of these people, actually get a lift in print. As they develop a deeper relationship, now they have the convenience of being able to take you on the road when they need to, but also like the feel of that magazine on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee and their slippers. So for at least some of these people, it's not a danger or a threat at all towards you. Okay, let's jump ahead into this one. How are people using these things? This is a very important question for you because you're all developing apps. We ask people how much time do they spend using the browser on their device. In other words, is this just a really cool access point for the internet? Or is it an app machine? Surprising to us, we did not expect these numbers to be this strong. 39% of people tell us they're spending more time using the web browser than they are using apps. Now, the larger chunk, the 45%, are doing them equally, at least in their estimation. We are seeing other data that are suggesting this is also the case, so we're not the only ones measuring this. This is very, very important to you, and I think very positive to you. On the one hand, I'm up here saying people are framing this device as a device that's ideal for this very tailored and cultivated experience that you can provide from a magazine perspective, and you assume that means apps. So do they. So when they're talking about browser time, they're thinking of hitting your website. On the other hand, if people are open to using the browser, that at least gives you an escape hatch from the all-grasping hand of Apple that is trying to make sure that they have complete control of the app environment and allowing at least more open access to the customer through the web. And I think that's going to be important to you. Even if in the long run, most of the value you get out of tablets comes through the App Store, you really want there to be an escape hatch because it's going to be part of the leverage that you'll need in your negotiations with Apple. So let's talk about what happens in the app world versus the browser world as we see people clearly positioned to use both and you eventually needing to consider using both. People in this environment are still investing in apps, so don't get me wrong. Apple, of course, reported the 10 billionth app download. Tablet owners report downloading on average 17 apps for their tablets as of now. Tablet owners have spent on average $34 on apps for their tablets. So yeah, I'm telling you browsers are an interesting escape hatch, but really the energy is over here. And the nice thing is the paid energy is over here on the app side of the house, and that's something that you're very interested in for obvious reasons. However, even though improved browsers won't kill these app experiences, they will actually force them to evolve. So in the app world, the 1.0, if you will, was basically a lot of apps were just like browser shortcuts. Not yours per se, but a lot of other apps. Your Bank of America app, in fact, a lot of other informational apps like the original Wall Street Journal app was just a way to access the web through a link that sat there and looked like an app. And basically the goal of the original app world was just to simply give you access to the power and the features of this particular device, which someone loved so much. Okay. Now in the apps 2.0 world that we're moving into, partly because apps are being challenged by the browser, but partly because people are being innovative with the apps that they're developing, you're going to see apps that interact with each other. In other words, you have some native processing and some native data that's experienced on the device itself. It's not happening in the cloud, and therefore apps can speak to each other if they're designed to. And that can be something as simple as you have sister apps from sister publishers, or you have two apps from the same company that are designed to interoperate, so that you might have an app that provides some kind of, if you're in a popular science world, for example, you might have an app that provides some kind of consistent interactivity from issue to issue to issue, whereas you have a separate app for the actual issue itself. So there are processing tasks that can be accomplished in an app 2.0 world. The other thing that can happen is instead of the app simply giving the user the ability to exploit this device, we're going to see a world in which this device can now interact with other devices. Now, we're seeing that in the video world already. Comcast, Verizon, these are all companies who are building apps that are designed to control your television set-top box. They're designed to control your game console. All of these things are allowing people to have a new level of interaction with multiple devices. So that takes advantage of the local processing of the device. It's not all just being fed from the cloud, which is what browser experiences typically do. The other thing that you're going to see people do is push to make apps prove why it's okay to be offline. We're seeing right now from the consumer data that about 2/3 of the iPads that are currently in the market are not connected to a data plan. Now, about half of iPads have the potential to be 3G, but that means that there's a big chunk of them that are not currently connected in 3G. So that means that people are only connecting when they have a Wi-Fi network close to them, which they do at home, they might at work, and maybe they do at a favorite coffee shop, but they don't always. And that is going to mean that there's an opportunity to let people know that, hey, the value of an app is that it can work even when you're disconnected. So you see that the app world is probably going to have to change as a result of the pressure from the browser and the way the devices are being made. And that's a good thing for two reasons. Number one, you want these apps to have the power so that people think, I need to pay for power. And that's one of the very exciting things about what apps have done and tablets are doing, is that it allows people to feel like it is something worth paying for. The second reason you want this to happen is that you really, really want apps to get to the point where they are speaking to each other and creating an interesting world, because you are going to need to feed content into other people's apps in the future. I'm just going to plant that thought. But you are going to need to feed content into other people's apps in the future. And that can really only happen best in an Apps 2.0 world where apps speak to each other. Okay, I'm going to get back to that a little bit later on. Let's jump ahead. What this means. It means you need to raise the bar for what qualifies as an app. The earliest app examples were early app examples. Now we need them to rise in quality and in sophistication. Number two, I don't want you, it's not that you can't. I said you can't equate apps with money and browsers are free. It's not that you can't. You can do that. I don't want you to. You don't want you to. Because as long as Apple has its grip on the world of apps, then you're only going to have one way to try to make money off this thing, and it's going to come at a very hefty toll. So you want to develop browser-based experiences that people find worth paying for as well. And in fact, you might argue that eventually, if you can sufficiently accomplish this, you could turn the tide. Flip it around to where the apps are the thing you give away for free. Low functionality modules that are promotional or interesting, and it's the browser experience that you get people to pay for. Don't obsess about trying to accomplish that this year, but as you see the 82 million people who are eventually going to have one of these devices over the next 5 years, look at them and say, if I can teach them gradually that it's not the app that's worth paying for, it's the experience I provide that's worth paying for. You can lead the payment from the app to the bigger experience, which includes the web. It also includes multiple devices. And that's why my last point on this slide is you need a digitized relationship with the consumer across platforms. So that it's not simply about, here's my relationship with you in the iPad App Store, here's my relationship with you in print, but here's my overall digitized relationship, even if it includes analog things like pages of printed ink. Okay, let me throw this out there for you. We baited you with this a little bit in an email that we sent out a couple of weeks ago. We asked people, hey, first of all, are you interested in ever having a tablet? And no surprise, about 3/4 of online people think they want to have a tablet at some point. We asked them, what operating system would you most prefer on a tablet? Only had to pick one. 46% said Microsoft Windows. Okay, that is so laughable on so many levels. Have these people never used Windows? No, I don't need to get unseated. But first of all, there is no Windows for tablets. But that's not important to them. They don't care who is currently making tablets. What this means is not, I love Microsoft. Believe me, it does not mean that. It doesn't mean that Apple company is just a fresh upstart and I want to ignore them. What it really means is, oh, this is a computing thing. And when I compute, I use Windows. A lot of these people are probably completely baffled by the question, which is, we did that on purpose. They're baffled by the question because they're thinking, well, is this a trick question? It's a computing device. It has an operating system. It's got to be Windows, right? So on the one hand, this either represents Apple's challenge. If Apple wants to dominate the next 82 million owners the way it's dominating the first 10 million US owners, it's going to have to educate these people about what it adds, what value it adds. On the other hand, this is a huge opportunity for Microsoft. If they get their act together in the right time frame, they can capitalize on the fact that when people think PC computing, they think Microsoft. Even if they hate it, remember, even if they hate it. We are creatures of habit. Now, this is a big challenge, of course, for Android, BlackBerry, the Palm OS, and so on. What's going to matter, though, is that when people walk into a store or when they're hearing their friend talk about their tablet, they're not going to ever say, what operating system does that use? So this is not a fair question about the marketing of these devices. It's just really a fair question that helps us understand how people are conceiving of this whole market. And they're thinking of it as a computing device. That is further demonstrated when we say, okay, what about the brand of manufacturer? Here's where Apple comes back. That's what people understand. Oh, Apple makes these things. Yeah, I'd want an Apple brand for this. But look who follows Apple right away. Dell, there's that Microsoft thing again, and then HP. Yeah, these are PC makers, the biggest PC makers from Dell and HP. And you're talking about, yeah, clearly people understand this is not a phone. Notice there are some phones up there getting down lower to the bottom, Nokia, HTC. These are phone makers. Well, that's not the way consumers are conceiving of this. They're conceiving of it as a PC. They're not conceiving of it, I should say, as a post-PC paradise, which is the way Steve Jobs himself has characterized it. It's like, this is not a PC, this is this new thing, which it is very new. But people are stuck in the PC world. That's why they want Windows on an HP or Dell. Will they get that? It's a different question, but that's where their minds are right now. We do believe this year iPad 2 will take 80% of the market. That's pretty easy to predict, I have to admit. We just look at supply availability, we look at marketing power, we look at time in market. iPad 2 is already in market as of last weekend. Everybody else is just going to be trickling out over the next several months, and some of them won't even make it until Q4. So that means iPad 2 is going to have it. The real question is next year, when even more tablet PCs are available for sale and more people are ready to finally buy them and the prices are coming down, which one do they snap up? That'll be the big question. Will it be iPad 3, which of course will be announced next year? So what you can do as an industry. As an industry, I really recommend that you keep the pressure on Apple to let you have the customer relationship. The whole conversation over Apple insisting that they take 30% of revenue in perpetuity is an important one, but it's not the most important one. The thing you need more than anything is the customer relationship. What you're going to talk about a lot today is how to make the ideal digital magazine experience on a tablet, and I think that's wonderful. But you're never going to know whether it's ideal unless you know who you're talking to and how they're enjoying it or receiving it or consuming it. And the only way to do that is to have a digital relationship. So whatever you do, keep threatening the browser as a way around. You've got Next Issue Media saying we're going with Android first because we can't come to terms with Apple. Whatever pressure as an industry you can put on Apple to remind them. Let me just show you an example. This is the screen that Apple is going to show when someone buys something through the iPad store, the App Store, and you as a publisher request that person's information. Share your information? Yeah, that's really inviting, isn't it? Yeah, I can tell you that was by design. That is not an accident. It's like, are you sure? The developer, no name, some random company, who knows, it might not even be the magazine maker as far as I know, would like your name, email, and zip code so they can send you messages. I mean, this is just so don't allow. All right? Let me compare that to something that happened just last week. This is request for permission. I wanted to watch The Dark Knight on Facebook. Why? Because I'm a nerd. And before I could do so, it says this app, the Watch the Dark Knight from Warner Brothers, so it identifies who I'm dealing with, is requesting permission to do the following. It's not saying, are you sure? It's saying, yeah, is it okay if they do this? And look at how they're going to give you. You probably can't read that. I'll tell you what it says. It says, includes name, profile picture, gender, networks, user ID, list of friends, and any other information I've shared with everyone. I should be turning tail and running. at the information that Facebook is asking me to give Warner Brothers. But because I'm in Facebook, and Facebook asks people this all the time, because allow is nice and blue and friendly and not red, and there's nothing that says don't allow, it says leave app. As a consumer, I can either have this experience and share my data or not have the experience. This is the way Apple and Facebook differ. Apple is essentially living in the last century when it comes to this policy. Facebook, on the other hand, understands that in the future, you're going to have multiple relationships. It is going to broker many of them happily. That's where Apple eventually needs to go in order to serve you as an industry. Are they ready to do that yet? No, clearly they're not. And I think they really believe what they're doing is right, but they're thinking about it in an old-fashioned way, in a monopolist mindset, which they happen to be, so I guess that's why they think that way. Okay, among yourselves, you're going to need information to flow quickly. I commend you on even having this event this early in the tablet world. You're here because you know that this thing moves quickly. It's going to move even quicker, as I already showed you in the numbers. I really encourage you strongly to share best practices. I know that obviously you're sitting among competitors in many cases, and you don't want to get in any kind of antitrust situation, certainly. But you do need to let each other know very quickly what doesn't work, because you want each other to rise as a group. It's not going to be the case that one or two of you will succeed and the rest will fail. You'll either all rise or none of you will rise, just because what you have to define is so large in such a short period of time, you've got to figure it out very quickly. So I'm going to encourage you to share expertise. And that's not just about design or experience. It's also just on how in the world do we port from this platform to that platform, because the platforms are about to multiply. I'm going to mention that here. Well, actually, no, I cut that slide for time. What I mean by that is you're going to be talking about, do we do WebOS for HP? Remember, HP was near the top of the list of makers that people were going to trust to make a tablet. And everyone was saying, why are they doing WebOS? Why didn't they just go with Android? Well, now we're starting to see. Just this week, actually just yesterday, HP announced that the folks at Rovi took 3 days to port their Angry Birds app to WebOS for HP's tablet. 3 days. The folks who developed the SimCity line of games took a week to develop their most recent app to take it from iPad to WebOS. Why? Because WebOS was specifically designed to be the easiest thing in the world to port to. And the first tablet coming out of the WebOS world from HP is the exact same dimensions as the iPad. So everything you've done from a design perspective will translate immediately as well. So they're smart about this. They're not going to have a large base of customers, but if it only takes a couple of hours to port to it, I recommend porting to it. In fact, Sarah Rotman-Epps, who's my colleague who makes this call, has made the official call as of 2 weeks ago. It's now time to prioritize it this way. iOS from Apple, then WebOS from HP, just because it's going to be so easy, you might as well take care of it and get it out of the way, and then Android. That's her new list of priorities. Okay, if you work together, one of the things you have to do in working together is making sure you get some really great ad experiences going. Make sure that this becomes critical to the business, because we're not going to succeed if you're going to be dependent entirely on the consumer revenue. You need that ad revenue. And advertisers are very excited about this, so let them fund you. At some point, you're going to need to find the time to explore new media form factors. Right now, you're porting magazines. You're adding interactivity. It was a great point that was made about moving the movement of content through the page. I love that. However, there is probably going to come a day and a time in which you have content that needs to be separated out of that. Individual articles that are not just fed up Google style into some kind of news feed, but that are taken design and everything and fed into other apps that people have paid for. Other content apps, other experience apps, a location app that's a tourism app put on by the, who knows, the folks running the commerce, the local business commerce, I can't even think of the name, in a city like Denver. And they want to make an app about Denver that helps you get around Denver, and they want to have any content that you happen to have written about Denver or business in Denver or skiing outside of Denver or whatever it is. And so do you just feed them the text and let them present it, or do you actually feed them a module, a piece of content that goes in and actually fulfills your reader's expectations in a branded way? That's not something you have to worry about today. I just need you to be open to these kinds of things in the future, because it's the way to exploit the app economy in a way that you're probably going to need and want over time. Okay, We are to the end of the actual slides. There's the link that you need to go to if you want to get a copy of the slides. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. We have a couple minutes left to take any questions that you have. There's a million things we could have talked about that we didn't. You want to raise your hand, we've got some mic wranglers who are willing to come around and give you a microphone to ask a question. Crickets. Crickets. Is there one? Did I see a hand? There we go. Got a microphone right there. Microphone up? Go ahead. I guess it's not. Yell loud and I'll repeat you. Yeah, so the question is, I said that reading newspapers and magazines on desktop PCs is not in the top 10 list. It's actually kind of a trick point that I made, and I'm glad you're calling me out on it, because technically, reading content provided by newspapers and magazines is something that people are doing on their top 10 list. But they don't construct it mentally as reading magazines and newspapers online. They're hitting the web. It comes under their searching Google. Sad to say, it comes under their searching Google experience when they tick off boxes on our question. So we ask both questions, and it turns out that the one they check and the other one they don't. Great question. Any other questions? Yes, right there in the middle. There's a friendly face. How are you?
Hey, James. You suggested that we should be looking at our apps as sort of part of a holistic environment with our websites and so on. Do you know, can you point to anybody who's doing that very well?
Well, so there are niche publishers. I'll think of America's Test Kitchens, for example, who have a completely comprehensive relationship with their reader. I mean, and it spans radio, television, books, web, recipe databases, and print publications. And the only way you can do that is with a single database. You got a single view of your customer. It's a CRM system that works very well for them because they're in the direct media business in a way that many of you are not. But I think they're kind of the model for where you need to go in terms of conceiving of your customer. Because once you know that, I mean, you know you've outsourced the fulfillment of your magazines for good reasons for so many decades, but now you don't know who your reader is, and they don't really know who you are. You're an 800 number that they call. They get a call center person who doesn't really care about the magazine content passionately the way the reader does. So I'm not chastising you for that. I'm just suggesting that that's one of the things that's going to have to change. And I think people like America's Test Kitchens, Rodale Press is often held up as an example of someone that, for similar reasons, it's a smaller niche focused, but the niche people are teaching the rest of us a lesson, I think. I think we got time for one last question, if there is one. There we go.
James, hi. Related to the top 10 uses, have you looked deeply at the amount of time spent on those top 10? For example, those 49% of magazine and newspaper users, do they do a lot of it?
Actually, we don't know that. That's a great question. It'll go into our next survey. As you may have seen, we only got 210 out of the 4,400 people we surveyed. Only 210 of them owned a tablet, so we're kind of working with data that's a little small for now. That'll be significantly larger in April when we go back in the field, so we can do that. My hunch is that of that top 10 list, video is the one that takes a preponderance of time, web surfing generally a preponderance of time, just because those are very time-intensive activities. But I don't know. I really don't know whether magazine reading is going to be above average or below average or probably close to the average is what I'm assuming, but until I measure it, I don't know. Anyway, I want to thank you all for your time. Good luck through the rest of the day, and good luck with these development efforts. Thank you.